Okay, so now you have your template. What are you going to do for postcard? Well, that's going to be pretty much entirely up to you. In the directions, you have a vague message from me saying you can design a cause or message that you're passionate about, an up-and-coming event that you would like to promote. This could be a poster for something that's happening in your school, in your neighborhood, in your family, a party, a reunion. There's also the other option, a cause or message that you're passionate about. Well, some of the samples that I have here are Texas, and maybe you want to do something about your hometown. You want to do something about your city, about the state. And why don't I go ahead and maybe do something like that real quick? I'm gonna, well, I actually, rather than Bing, I'm gonna go to Google because they have pretty good tools to find images. And I'll start with something simple like vintage uh, postcards, just to get more ideas. I mean, I gave you a few examples, but how about just vintage postcards of Texas? And I get all kinds of results. I'm going to click on images specifically, and I get some more. Some of the ones that you've seen are there. There's variations on the same theme. You know, the state, a hat, the name of a city, images from around. Now, it doesn't have to be super intricate. I'd like you to get at least the one that you like that's simple enough, or maybe several variations on one theme. This is not your final project. This is just the beginning of the class. I want to say that I might take an idea from this one, which is one of the samples already in the assignment. Actually, I'll go get the picture from there. In the meantime, though, rather than just sticking to the whole state, how about I'm going to look for pictures of Dallas, Texas. And I see that there's a whole bunch of them, and some of these look pretty good. They're probably professionally taken. Somebody owns them, more than likely. So the tools that I mentioned that Google has, they're right here. One of them is usage rights. Although we're just doing this for class, we're not selling any of this, hopefully. Not now, not with these pictures. I'm going to click on usage rights and find Creative Commons licenses. That means that the owner of the photos is willing to share the photo with the world so that we can use it, especially if it's for a class, if we're learning. They probably won't mind that we're using their picture in class. There's some that are already altered. There's more that are just snapshots. Some of them are professional, but we're crossing our fingers that these are going to be Creative Commons licensed photos that we can use. I like this one, the free photo on Pixabay. I'll click on it, and it shows me the picture itself. It's actually a thumbnail of the picture. This is not the actual picture. We still have to visit the site. Don't copy or try to save any of these that are smaller. These are just thumbnails, so they're just representations of what the photo actually looks like. If we try to work with any of these, we might end up with a pixelation in the wrong resolution. When I click on visit, it takes me to the site Pixabay. I do have an account for Pixabay. They're free. And I do believe that this is already in the resources. There's a link. But we can go to the free download. I'm going to pick a size 1920 by 1035 JPEG. That's in pixels. I'll say download. If we had an account, and I do have an account, you don't have to do the rigmarole that is the I'm not a robot thing. I'm going to select the fire hydrant here, click on next, traffic lights, oh boy, verify. Okay, that was quick and easy. The user of the, or rather the owner of the photo says editing isn't required. The linking back is greatly appreciated. If you were to use this in a website, in a project, you could send a link back to David Mark, the owner of the photo. You could copy that text and actually include it in a project. Or donate money. They'll take that as well. For this class though, I'm going to use it momentarily. And I'll switch to Photoshop real quick. There's my template with the horizontal postcards. I'm going to go to File and Open. I saved it on the desktop. Actually, I gotta go and chase it. And what I mean by that is I have to open my browser again, go find it. If I press Control J on most browsers, I'll get a history of what has been downloaded. There's the Dallas photo that I just downloaded. I'm going to open up the folder, and there it is, Dallas, etc., for the name. I can rename it to something else just so it's easier to find. I'm only going to use it once, so I'll just leave it as such. I just need to know where it is. I'm going to move it into that folder that I had going for me on my desktop called Artsy 1305. I'm going to copy this, right click and copy right there, and go put it into that folder. I'll open here right there. It's with my templates. I'll just press right click and paste. I could also press Control C, Control V as in Victor to copy and paste. Command C, Command V on a Macintosh to do the same thing. Now I'll go back to my Photoshop and try to find it. File, open. It should be easier to find because it's already open. It's right there, Dallas, etc. Click open, and there it is. Now I'm going to do some work outside of the file that is a template. I know that I have two blocks in here, 6 inches across, 4 inches down. And this one is probably something else. Photoshop tells me it's 26 inches across and 14 inches down. It's high resolution. It's got lots of information. I want to fit it into the space that is 6 by 4. I can start by doing this. This is something that I used to do. I'm going to duplicate the background. This is the one layer in the image currently. Right click and say duplicate the layer. Just makes a copy. Background copy is fine. I'll click OK. Now I have 2 copies of the same image in 2 separate layers. I do that so that whenever I crop, I still have access to the original image. I go to the image menu, and rather than changing the image size to 6 by 4, I want to change the canvas size. That way, everything about this image can change. And by that I mean everything in size. Everything, as long as it stays in the center. The width is currently very large. I'll change this. I'm already in inches. I know that I need 6 inches across, and I need 4 inches in height. So it's going to reduce everything. The arrows tell me it's going to point everything towards the middle. I'll click OK and tell it to proceed. It's warning me that the new canvas is smaller, so some clipping will occur, which is fine. I'll proceed. A lot of clipping occurred. I only see a small portion of the picture because now everything is trying to fit into this very small space. Because I made a copy, you can tell in the thumbnails that there's more information. We can get to it by, I'm going to click on my Move tool, the very top tool. And I'll press Control 0 to center everything. I can see that there's some pixelation going, but that's fine because I know that I have more information than this. I will click Control minus to zoom out. It's something that I just noticed that I had not previewed because I only saw parts of the properties, is that this image, although it's got lots of information, it tells me that it's at 72 dots per inch. In the end, I'm going to be working with 300 dots per inch. So I'm going to take the opportunity, now that I still haven't done much, to press Control Z to undo a couple of things. You can go to Edit and tell it to undo the last canvas size and keep on doing that until you're back to the image. There's also a window that's a history window that is keeping track of all our movements. I made a duplicate layer, and that's as far as I need to go back. So I have all of my area there. That's the equivalent of pressing Control Z at least once. My PPI is at 72 dots per inch. I'm going to change that in my image size from 72 to 300. The width will remain just as wide. Because I'm going smaller and because I have lots of information, I'm going to play with the width for now at least and tell it to go to about 10 inches across. It'll make the image considerably smaller, but a lot of information will remain. That way we don't have pixelation. We still have a high resolution image. Now that I have all the image that I want, I can do the canvas size change. Change canvas size to what we originally wanted, which was 6 inches across and 4 inches in height. Click OK. There will be some clipping that occurs, but at least my image is at 300 dpi. This is important because whenever I do the Control 0 to zoom in, Control minus to zoom out a little bit, my background copy currently on this layer, as you can tell, has lots of information that we can use. I'm going to center the image in such a way that it makes sense, and by that I mean that the proportions are doing well, that I see downtown on the bottom right, all the clouds that are part of this image also are highlighted. Because I'm in background copy, I can press Control T, which will allow me to do a free transform. In the edit folder, there is a command called free transform. The shortcut is Control T. That's what I pressed. Control T will then give me anchors on the existing image. I can then use Photoshop. If you're using the new version of Photoshop, you don't have to press Shift to keep everything in the same dimensions. You can simply lower or expand the image. Pixelation will still occur if you go too small or too large, but because we have plenty of image to work with, I'm just going to do this a little bit. Double click to accept. I'll press Control 0 to zoom in, and now I have an image that is the correct size that needs to go into the final project. So I'm going to hide the history for now. I don't need it at the moment. As I said, we have this pair of images in the template. Eventually, we want to work on something in a separate image to bring back. Let's start to do that. I'll switch back to my browser where I see I have 4 browsers open. Sorry about that. And go back to the lesson. The lesson, I said, has multiple images that you can get ideas from. The Google search, which should also help you. And this is what I mean by that. On these images, at least, I don't remember what these are. You can open them one by one. There's multiple images. They're not necessarily all about Texas. There's some from other states. However, this one, I want to get some elements from it. I'm going to right click and tell it to open the image in a new tab. And it went away. And actually what happened is that it probably downloaded it. So just like before, I'm going to press Control J, and it shows me that yes, it did download it. I'm going to follow the folder to show it there. There's the postcard. I'm going to manually move it onto the same folder, Artsy 1305, on my desktop. That way, when I go back to Photoshop, I can go to File, Open, and there it is, Postcard 1. Click Open. Now, I now have 3 images that I'm working with. I have my template, which I could keep closed, but I'll keep it open so I don't lose track of it. I have the Dallas image that I downloaded, and I have this Texas. I want to get a couple of things. I'd like to get some elements from it, some ideas. See how all the pictures are inside of the text? I like that. They do have this frame around it that can be duplicated. I'm not going to do that for this particular project. Like I said, I want to do something simple. I'm gonna maybe see if I can get either the star or this hat. If you're comfortable with Photoshop, it shouldn't be too difficult to get the images. For my Photoshop class, I show multiple ways of cutting images. The simplest way, and it's one that I hope you're familiar with because we will be working with this tool later on, at least in versions across the board, not only this Photoshop, but older versions, or maybe even the Adobe Photoshop Express, have pen tools. The pen tools look like the tip of a fountain pen, if that makes any sense, and can be used to create um, a frame around the images that we want to cut, copy, etc. Now for me, I've been using the pen tool for a number of years, so it's almost second nature. I don't expect everybody to have this. I will include some videos that show how to use the pen tool. When we move on to Illustrator, this will be essential. That way, this actually creates a path. I can find the path, click, and select it. That's what I wanted, was a selection. That way I can go to the Edit menu, tell it to copy, and bring it onto the image. I'll put it here, and I'll just drop it there for now. This is not the best cut hat, and that's fine. And you're probably asking yourself or telling yourself, wow, that was really quick, what was done there with the pen tool, especially if you're not familiar with it. Like I said, this is something that's taught in Photoshop. However, I hope that you're using the latest version of Photoshop. In that case, I'm going to delete this for now, that work path. I'm going to deselect and show you another way to do it with the new tools that come with Photoshop. And let's hope that that works. It's so new that I'm slightly familiar with it. I know that I can make all kinds of different selections. One of them is going to be in one of these tools is the magic wand. If I click and hold the magic wand, it tells me that there's an object selection tool. One thing that Adobe has been working on has been artificial intelligence. And I have selected the tool. Like I said, if you don't see this, if you see quick selection or magic wand instead, see that you can get the object selection tool. The artificial intelligence that I'm talking about then sort of will figure out that if I hover on top, I make a selection on a square, that there's an object inside of that square, and there is. It's a hat. It figured it out, and it helped me out. And it's already made most of the selection. There's a couple of things that it didn't get over here, but we can fix that. On the tool dashboard up here, there's a select and mask, and hang on a second, I need to be on the right one. Am I on the right one? Yes. Select and mask, and I have additional information. It's showing me, see how the rest of the image, it sort of has a checkerboard and it's faded away, and it's masking that. It's saying this is the part that we selected. Well, I can make additions to this by selecting my pen tool that's included in the dashboard. It says you can add to the selection or you can subtract from the selection. Plus to add, minus to subtract. And my tool, at least right now, this brush seems to be a good size. I'm a little bit unfamiliar with how I can change it by looking at this right now, other than, well, there it is. There's a size of the brush. It's at 56 pixels. I can make this a little bit smaller. And then that way I can add to my selection to make sure that that area that is a little bit faded inside of the hat will still work. Let me see if I show the original, what happens. It just shows me the original clip, shows the edge. I'm still playing with the selection. I think that maybe there's a little bit here that I can add. And then once I'm happy with it, I'll click on OK. And my selection it's okay. Maybe it's got a little bit extra, but I can cut that off. It bled a little bit into the black screen, but since I have the selection, I can go with the edit button or menu and say copy that, take it back to my Dallas picture. I already have the original hat that I copied. I'm going to hide that layer, edit, and paste. Now I have a new layer created. And remember, this has additional stuff that I didn't want. I'll zoom in, and the lines that it brought in can be easily taken care of with the eraser tool. I'll click to select, make sure that I have that selected. I'll use the brush that comes with it. You can make this smaller or larger in the same way. The 31 has a hardness of 100%, so it's a harsh eraser. I'll make it a little bit softer. The same size is fine. I'll get rid of the other side here. And now I have two hats. One that I copied originally with the pen tool or cut out with the pen tool and then copy. I can get rid of this layer. I'm going to delete it. My layer 2, I can either leave it as such, or I can double click the layer name and just say this is the hat. I'll rename the layer. You don't have to rename the layers, it just helps. Well, what do I do with a floating hat? I said that I like the original postcard in the way that they have the name of the state really big, and although I'm not going to spend a lot of time to make an art image of text, I can start with basic text. I'll click on background copy so that anything that I do will be between the background copy, that is the city of Dallas, and the hat. I can make sure that that's the case by adding a new layer, which is now layer 1, in between background copy and hat. Remember that the hierarchy of the layers is very important. What you see on top is what's actually going to be in front. At some point, maybe after I'm done with this video, I'll share a movie. It's an old Walt Disney movie that explains how they used to do animated features in the olden days, very olden, but back in the 1960s. And it works just like the layers in Photoshop. This is not a new concept. I will use my text tool, the letter T. The first one is fine. I'm going to write horizontally. I'll just type somewhere where I think I can see the cursor. Click there. And well, there's already some text that's lorem ipsum. It's just putting in some dummy text. I have this Forte font, because I'll use that later, but I'm going to select, instead of Forte, Impact, which is your basic meme font, and type in the city, or rather the name, Dallas, in capital letters, just to be impressive size. It's blue currently. I'll change the color. Do I want to use the whole space there? Why not? I mean, it's a big state, big city, right? So I'll just leave it there. I'll double click the T's to select the whole text. Currently my text color is blue. I'll change that to white. Click OK. If you're not familiar on how to use the color swatches and the color tools in Photoshop, I'll also try to find some videos that'll help you with that. Okay, so what else can I do to Dallas? It's just white letters so far. I'm going to make sure that I go to the hat. I can either find the hat in the layers, or I can right click and select the hat layer and move it somewhere else. I'm going to move it right about here, and I made the mistake of making that layer and then not sticking to it. Now Dallas is on top, so I need to go to the Dallas layer, click that, hold it, and drag it below the hat, and that way it'll be behind it. I want to make it look like the letter D is wearing the hat. It could be the letter S, the letter A, it could be any of these letters. I don't know, I'll keep it there for now. I'll click on the text. Actually, I want to make this a little bit smaller to work with. I can either select the text and make it smaller, or I can press Control T, because it is after all a layer. And you know, I did the free transform earlier. That's what Control T will do. It's Command T on a Mac, and make it a little bit smaller all around. So it's still centered right around there. I'll press Enter to accept. I'll go back to the hat layer and move it above the D. And it kind of looks like maybe the letter D is wearing a hat. I can now go back. Let me go back to look for something else. I want to, you know, like I said, I'm not going to build an elaborate design inside of Dallas, but I don't know, other than the city skyline right now, what I can get to go and represent. Well, since we're going with some sort of a Western theme, I have the hat there. If I go search for an image maybe of a blue bonnet field in Google, let's say blue bonnets, and see what I can find. It's misspelled, but I think it's forgiving of Google. Just tell me you mean blue bonnet, and I want to find images. And once again, I want to make sure that these are images that I can use. And I went back to start page. Let's go back to Google, look for blue bonnets. and click on images. And tools, I want to make sure that the usage rights are Creative Commons and see what's out there. I want something that's kind of bright. Maybe these blue bonnets here will work. Some are different. The grass coloring is different. Yeah, so I think that the top one looks okay to use. I'll click on it. Visit the site and click to Houston. Close that ad. Right click and open image in new tab so that I have a better look into it. I'll right click and copy the image. I'll go back to Photoshop. Now I could have saved it, and maybe I should save it just so that I know where it is, and in case I need to use it again, I can do that. I'll right click and save image as, and this way I can go straight into that desktop folder. I don't have to move it around, and I'll rename it as Bluebonnets. In Photoshop, I'll go to File, Open. There's a Bluebonnets. Open that and keep it there for now. I think that that's all I'm going to take from this postcard. So I'm going to close it. I don't need to save it. I have a copy of the original. I already have the hat somewhere else. Now I need to prepare this image to bring in the Bluebonnets. What am I going to do with the Bluebonnets? Well, I want the Dallas word here to actually have Bluebonnets inside. So I can make sure that I'm on Dallas. I'll press and hold the Control key. I do believe on a Mac it's going to be your Option key, as long as the tool on top of the Dallas T, and by T I mean the text in the Dallas, turns into that hand with the selection icon just below it. Click on it. It'll make a selection of the text. Now that I have a selection of the text and I'm on this layer, I can go to Edit and Paste, but Paste Special. If we paste special, I can say paste into the selection, which is going to be the letters City of Dallas or just Dallas. And the image is not large enough, but we can change the size. I'm going to click on the left side of this layer. It will tell me the thumbnail, the picture is a little bit smaller than the picture we're working with, but now the Dallas, the word Dallas has been masked, which is great because if I stick to the layer to the left, I can use my move tool, press Ctrl T, the free transform tool, and I can make this larger so that it fits inside of the word Dallas. I'm not too concerned about the resolution because I'm going to do some other things to this as well. I can, for starters, give the letters a border, and I can do that in the layer below Dallas. I'll click on Effects and tell it to stroke the letters. Currently it's stroking it with a black line all around. The size is a little bit too large, minus 54 pixels, so let's try something like 3. That's too small. How about 10? 10, well, I can actually see it. For now, I don't know that black necessarily works. I'm going to change the color to maybe white so that it's outlined. And why don't we stick to a theme and maybe use blue, and that'll be okay. I'll accept that. You can see OK to accept it. And then these are my images of the Bluebonnets. I'm going to change the opacity so it's a little bit lighter, and then I get a little bit of contrast going. Contrast, very important. Press Ctrl 0 to zoom out and see everything. Control minus to do the same thing. Something that maybe I can do, I don't want to make this necessarily smaller, but I do want to move it because I feel like it's covering up the buildings. In my background copy, I can use the move tool and move the city up a little bit, and then maybe that way I can see more of the city, the Dallas text, and the image on top of it can be moved at the same time if I select. First of all, I have all these items going. I have the hat, I have the blue bonnets, and I have the word Dallas. I want to move them all at once. The problem is that if I start to move the city of Dallas, or rather the word Dallas on its own, then I don't know what's moving. Everything's moving independently. I want to move everything as one. In the mask layer that I have here, Dallas and the blue bonnets, if I click in the middle, I'll get a lock so that these two will move at the same time. If I have hat selected, all my layers, first hat, I'm going to press and hold Control, click on layer 2. I'm still clicking and holding Control. I will click on Dallas, and then that way I should have started with a layer folder, but I can create one now. I'll right click. You can't see all of the options that I can see from here, but I can say all of these things right here. I'm going to create a group from layers, and I'll call this Dallas. Now I have a folder that's called Dallas, and if I open it, or rather click on the arrow there, I can see the elements. I'll close it so I don't have to see all this stuff. I'm going to minimize the properties on top, but now that I have that group, I can move it all at the same time, or at least that's what we could do in other versions. Nowadays, a more efficient way of doing this, what I'm trying to do, is to move all the elements at once. Although I can save that group folder, everything is inside of it, I can right click and tell it to convert to a smart object. That way, basically, we're going to have a smart element that has all of the elements, a smart element that has all the objects that we've created and put together, and will move as one. There's the hat with Dallas and the background image. If we wanted to edit this, then we would actually be opening essentially another document inside of the thumbnail. If I do that, then I have just Dallas and all the layers inside. That would work as if it were a separate document. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to close this because we're really working on a larger project. I think that the only one other thing that I would do here, well, I have Dallas and it's got the hat, it's got the background. Maybe I would put some sort of a message below. When I center that, when I leave it a little bit of space below so that I can put the message below there. I don't know that I have anything on layer 1, so I'll use it. If you don't have one, or if you don't have a blank layer to work with, they're easy to create. And what I want to do here is I'm going to use the gradient tool so that it goes from, I don't know that I want to use blue. I want to sort of fade out the background a little bit. I want to switch the foreground color to white, and in my dashboard I see that I have this going from foreground to transparent. So the foreground is currently white to transparent, going to nothing, and the gradient behind then will give me this white space below. It will not affect the top of the picture a lot. It'll just add that white there. This is not the best project necessarily, but it's a good way to start. I'm going to bring in more text so that I can have a message. I'll click Dallas and then give a message below. I'll click anywhere to start typing, and I'll say that this is the home of Dallas College. Writing in big letters. I'll select them all and get the text down to something readable. Maybe 48. I'll press Control A to select all the text so that all the text can be moved at once. 48. I could have started by changing the size, but I didn't. I'll bring this below. I can still make this smaller with Control T and bring in down the size so that it's smaller and centered. I don't need this to be white. This could be something else, something readable. I said that, well, if we were going to stick to a theme, I'll switch to blue. I'll double click the text. See if it'll allow me to switch back to blue. There it is. And I don't know that I want to use the impact. It's a little bit too impersonal. I think that the one that I had before was Fort, F-O-R-T-E. And now it's a little bit large, but I can make it smaller with the same tools. So from 44, let's see if we can get back to 36. And that's a better size. Home of Dallas College, I'll put it below so that it's readable. I can also add an effect on this that will stroke. And if we're stroking on the outside, maybe we can use white. And that way it'll outline. So at least for a start, I have a postcard with the background image that we got from the internet. We got the hat that also came from another image. We have some text that displays the message. Dallas, home of Dallas College. You could say anything else. Now, when you're working on your project, this is not the project you're working on. I'm just giving you an example of how I would create just a random postcard. You can do whatever subject you want. If you have questions about how to use Photoshop to do certain things, please let me know. I will have another video that shows you how to do the front fairly quick. And by that I mean hopefully less than half an hour of full video. Okay, so this is the front of a card. Now I want to take everything to the template. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to file, save. I should have saved earlier. Save early, save often. It's a Photoshop document. And I'll just call this front of postcard. It's saved as a Photoshop document so that it's got all the layers. I can close the blue bonnets. I can close this since I just saved it. Now I'm going to put the front on top. And the easy way to do this, or a good way anyway, file. And let's place embedded. Find the front of postcard and place. This is already 6x4, and I'll move it to the area that I want or need. Press enter. Now this is my original template. If I move in, the blue is still there, except now I have the image on top. It's the right size. I can do all kinds of things with it. Most importantly though, I can double click on it and open it up to keep on editing it. So I close this, press Ctrl 0, and make sure that this is also saved. This is a template that I have open, so I have filed save as so that I can save yet another one. This is the horizontal template. I still need to create the back and then put it here. So just because this will be the assignment that's going to be turned in, I'll save this as artsy 1305 underscore week 2. That's a good name. And then underscore my first initial and my last name, F. Rodriguez. I'll click OK to maximize compatibility. If I were to turn this in, and I wouldn't just yet because it's not done, but if you have issues with storage, or you just want to make sure that you keep track of what's going on with your assignments, you can go back and actually turn this in. I would go into my browser. I'll close this. I'll close that. I'll close everything except eCampus. eCampus stored at the bottom, or actually in the assignment itself, 2.1 postcard design. Click on that, and then toward the bottom you would browse your local files wherever it is that you have them saved. Mine are on my desktop, which was easier to see earlier. There it is, desktop, and then there is 1305. Instead of 1305, I have the artsy 1305 week 2 F. Rodriguez. I would click on open, and if you're still working on this and you want to let me know, then add that comment below. Still working on the background. And then you can hit submit. If you do turn it in like this, I will give you some feedback, and at least half of your grade until it's complete. In the following video, I'll show you how to do a background for, or rather the back end side of this project, and we can get it going. I would click submit, but I'd get an error.